check to make sure that that meets our quorum. So let's start out with Andy.
Here.
Okay. And Brent Cooper. Okay. And Dr. Figueroa.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Dave Fleischer.
Present.
Thank you. Janet Hara.
Here.
Thank you. Sybil Murphy.
Here.
Oh, there you are. Thank you. Kimberly Rossetti, I think she mentioned she was unable to be on today's call. Mark her excused. Connie Schnell, wasn't sure if she was going to be able to be on the call either. So I'll mark her excused as well. Let's see. And Carissa Schutzman, I believe she may have just joined us. Are you present on the call yet, Carissa? If so, you might need to unmute your microphone. Okay, we'll come back to Carissa. Dr. Stafford.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear anything, Jason.
Oh, okay. Can you hear okay now?
Yes, were you asking me something?
Yes, I'm just doing a roll call.
Oh, I am present. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Dr. Stafford.
Present.
Okay. And Michelle Tyson. Okay. And Rhonda Whitaker Hurt.
Yes.
Okay. And let's make sure here real quick. Eight. So that gives us 8 members. Okay. So we have 8 members. We need, the good news is we need 7 for a total quorum count. However, for our business services representatives, we're going to need the majority to be business representatives. So good news, bad news. The good news is we don't have really any specific action items for this committee today. However, that means we may need to a couple options. Some can step back, and if we need to actually tally up or actually increase our membership majority from the business community, because that's where we're short now. So we do have a total quorum of our members, which is 8, but of those 8, it looks like we only have 3 that are from the business community as it stands. So in the past, when this has come up, we have treated it as the meeting as an information session, and we shared essentially the same information minus the call to order, the official call to order, the official adjournment, the approval of the minutes, which are of course all action items. So a couple options with Andy, both Andy and Tara on the call. I don't know if either of you want to weigh in and talk about what you feel would be best, or how would be best to proceed.
So Jason, this is Andy. I mean, from a procedural perspective, we don't have any action that needs to be taken by this committee that is business related. I mean, we have action as it relates to minutes and adjournment, but that's not preventing any of the work of the WIB from moving forward if we don't have a technical meeting.
That's correct.
So I don't know, Tara, what your thoughts are, but I would just as soon keep everybody on the line who's taken the time to get the information, and then just state at the full WIB meeting that we had an information session and no action was taken.
I agree with that. I think without any action items that are required by the committee today, I think that's just fine.
Okay. All right. So I guess, does that mean we're off and running at this point then, Jason?
We're off and running. Take it away.
Okay. Well, Thanks. And again, thanks for everybody for joining us this afternoon for the committee meeting. In talking with Tara and Jason over the last couple of weeks, we were trying to decide whether we should have a meeting in the absence of any action, given the fact that everybody is super busy and trying to react to the world around us. And I thought that was probably a good reason to have a meeting. Looking back at the minutes from our February 19th meeting, the world couldn't have been any different in February of 2020, where we had 3% unemployment and a very high labor participation rate. And here we are 2 months later in a completely different world. And I know that the WIB staff and leadership has been doing a whole lot to react to this. And I think that this is just a huge, not only opportunity, but responsibility of the WIB to support businesses through times like this. So I figured the goal of today's meeting was just to hear what staff is doing in terms of, kind of pivoting 180 from our strategy and responding to the crisis. And I know they've been doing a lot of work. They've been doing excellent work. And I just wanted to give them an opportunity to educate us as members of the committee on what they're up to. So with that, I think I'll turn it over. Unless there's an objection, we'll just jump to number 5 of our agenda for this information session, which is programming, and turn it over to Jason to talk about employer support. Before we get started, any other kind of questions about the purpose of the meeting or what we should be doing before we jump in? Okay, hearing none. Jason, take it away.
Okay. First and foremost, can everyone see my screen that I am sharing? Everybody see that? Awesome. Just your standard PowerPoint presentation. So I appreciate that. So the information that we'll be going over during this meeting, we'll be utilizing this master PowerPoint presentation during that time. So what we wanted to do today is look at how we can give you all some updates on how the local business services team and our team members, obviously with the Kentucky Career Center, have been responding from an employer support and business services perspective in response to COVID-19. And so some of the updates that I'm going to share are going to include some really specific strategies and the implementation of those strategies. And then I'm also going to turn it over to Ellen Bates and Corey Eimer, who are going to talk a little bit about, from a direct service standpoint, just some updates on that are also related to employer support and business services. We know that, and as Andy somewhat referred to just a few moments ago, just a month ago, less than a month ago, our unemployment rate in Northern Kentucky was around 3.6%. And so what a difference a month can make. And we've heard different data being thrown out in terms of what the unemployment rate looks like now. I think it's safe to presume it's nowhere close to 3.6%, given that Kentucky has seen about 300,000 new unemployment insurance claims just over the past month. So we know that that volume of unemployment claims hasn't been seen since the Great Recession, and certainly not in that very short amount of time. So with these enormous challenges, how are we responding? What types of support are we providing to the community, including employers, of course, also dislocated workers? And I think it's safe for all of us to, in terms of the Career Center, to communicate that it's anything but business as usual right now. So with some guidance and support from Tara and our WIB leadership, the Career Center has made some really great updates to better serve our Northern Kentucky community. And so a few highlights of those updates, including transitioning all of our services to virtual services, to that format. We know that that was a requirement for the safety and health and well-being of customers and staff, but also it became a legal requirement that came down, of course, from Governor Beshear. So some of those examples of services that are being transitioned First and foremost were, how are we going to deal with all of these incoming phone calls that are happening? So team members are working, they're telecommuting, they're working, many of which are working from home. Some are going into the office on rare occasions, but making sure if that does happen that they're staggering their time there. But just a quick note about phone calls. We're seeing about 2,000 incoming phone calls a week just in Northern Kentucky. We know that it's thousands more statewide. And the vast majority of those calls are related to unemployment insurance. And so team members that were previously working on unemployment at the office are now doing that virtually. And then in addition to those team members, we have some of our members that are previously workforce or business services specialists, individuals that are funded by this board, are now helping triage some of those phone calls, those unemployment insurance phone calls as well. It's an all hands on deck approach. And as I mentioned earlier, statewide, we've seen around 300,000 unemployment insurance claims being filed. So we know that the phone call component is critical right now, because that when you have a system, when you have an unemployment insurance system, in terms of a mainframe standpoint, that dates back to the late 70s. In addition to the technology being so outdated, even the system itself at that time was never built to handle the capacity of unemployment calls coming in. So that's been obviously an enormous challenge, not just for Kentucky, but all over the United States and most of the unemployment insurance systems in other states as well. So I think that's just some perspective, just to mention. To really beef up our virtual services, we've also added 3 new web pages on the nkcareercenter.org website. And these resource pages are focusing on the topics of COVID-19. Obviously, there's so many fluid parts that are happening with that topic, and really looking at how we can provide the most up-to-date and the most relevant resources, with obviously an underlying workforce theme to them as well, in terms of those resources. And so that's directly available on our northernkentuckycareercenter.org page website. And in addition to the COVID-19, we also have added an unemployment insurance support and resource page as well. For employers, we're particularly excited about the job search marketplace website that was recently added for employers to be able to reach out to us and post a job, and we'll post it and we'll feature specific jobs that have been posted also in our Focus Talent job board. So that's the statewide job board that is utilized so that employers can come and communicate with a local Career Center representative, get their jobs posted in Focus Talent, and then utilize Focus Career, which has a dotted line connection to Focus Talent. The Focus Career side is the side where the job seekers are registered in that system as well. And so that will allow us to do refined referrals, pre-screening when necessary, and also pulling from those new job postings in Focus Talent is where we're highlighting on the job search marketplace website some of those featured jobs. And so we're really happy about that opportunity, because we know that in the midst of all of this challenge of workforce reductions and layoffs, there are employers that are actively hiring and in many cases, or some cases rather, increasing their hiring activity. So we wanted to give them a home in terms of how those opportunities are shared with the community. So I encourage you to check those pages out when you have a chance. Again, they're all accessible on the nkcareercenter.org website. We've also been utilizing the centralized number of the 292-6066 phone number for right now. It is mostly unemployment insurance calls, but really any entity or individual can call into that number as well. It's incredibly high call volume, so we know that we're just putting that out there. There's times where people aren't able to get through right away. we will call individuals back. We give you that commitment. We will call employers back. We give you that commitment. We have real scenarios that we can share about, staff members that have reached back out to to customers that have called in and have been unable to get through, and they've called back after hours or early hours, just to make sure that customers have received some form of communication. We know that for many of the customers, not just individuals, but some small businesses as well, are feeling just very scared. And so we want to be able to offer them the opportunity to talk with somebody as a resource. So we want to highlight that. We also have on the website, we've updated the contact page. I know that sounds very simple, but we've updated the contact page and have been very intentional about adding some specific categories. So if employers and individuals are reaching out to us, they can give us just a brief idea of the reason for their contact. And then one of our staff members and these are different staff members that are receiving these emails, can help triage those questions. So between the phone calls, the contact us, and the emails, hopefully we can give multiple options for individuals to utilize. In terms of the phones, the state has procured for Amazon Connect to be the service provider to allow the Career Center staff to answer those calls from any location. And I know that Tara's going to report later on in terms of some happenings from a regional and a statewide perspective, and how the relationship we've had and the roles that we've had together in launching some of those activities. But that was something that was launched statewide. And then we're doing some other things like weekly Facebook Live events. That is an opportunity for those employers that are hiring to be featured and to really showcase those opportunities to the community. It's a way for us to engage with customers virtually. And so far, those events have been really great. And I'm going to let Brighton Center in just a few moments share a little bit more detail about how those events have been going so far. Now, the other part that's really unique in this particular economic crisis that we're seeing from a workforce side that we didn't see as much in the 2008, 2009 Great Recession is this impact on small businesses. And so our business services team are really looking at how we can make sure that these small business owners and employees are utilizing all of the resources that are available locally, state resources, federal resources. And so our teams have been connecting businesses with these small business resources. So in the state of Kentucky now, small business owners, independent contractors, they can apply for unemployment insurance and receive some of these other, potentially some of these other business services that could include a forgivable disaster loan or economic injury loan. There's also a payroll protection program component as well. So we're making sure that our business services team is connecting the employers and the small businesses with these resources. And I wanted to mention too, in terms of rapid response, rapid response has been really that tactical team that goes out to employers and talks to the affected workers that are. So up to this point, or up to about a month ago, that was really our system when we learned about a layoff that was occurring. If it was typically a larger scale layoff, more than 25 individuals, our team would mobilize with highlighted workforce partners. They would go on site to the company and provide actual a presentation on services that were available. And so we're converting those services or the access to those services and that information to a virtual format. And I'll let Ellen describe a little bit more in detail what that looks like now and how many employers are being served, because we have been receiving an increase of notices of layoffs of local employers. Some prominent companies in particular, such as Safran and HMS Host and Embassy Suites, to name a few. The other thing I wanted to mention is the state has put together this employer handbook for COVID-19, and we've been sharing that as well. This is a pretty thorough, comprehensive handbook that could be really helpful information for an employer, in particular a small business. So, and then in addition to those resources, we're including some of the small business, the SBA info, along with anything through the Kentucky Small Business Development Center as well. The Kentucky Small Business Development Center also has a chapter within NKU. So we're sharing that information with those businesses too. So I just wanted to go through some of that, just really an overview of some of the employer supported business services that we've been sharing, or that we've been providing rather, during this COVID-19 crisis. Any questions before I turn it back over to Andy to turn it over to Brighton Center for the direct services update?
Questions for Jason? All right, so I guess Ellen is up next to talk about some of the direct service provider updates.
Yes, thank you. Wish we could all be in person, but I have to say I'm getting very used to these Zoom meetings, and feel like everyone's getting the technology down a little bit. So, Jason, do you mind going to the next slide for me? Awesome. So I have you up on two screens, so I apologize if I'm not actually looking at the camera while this is going. This is my setup here. So just to kind of provide a little bit more detail on some of the things that Jason had mentioned. We have very quickly transitioned into providing virtual services both for employers and for job seekers. So wanted to highlight a few of the things that we've done, and then talk a little bit more about kind of our plans, for the next couple of weeks and the foreseeable future as this is our current situation. But then also talk about, how I think that there's kind of a little bit of a silver lining to this in terms of our really, this kind of jettisons us into the virtual services and being able to carry some of these ideas forward, even after things return to somewhat of business as usual. So the Facebook Live events, like Jason mentioned, we have had 2 of those events already. We have a third one coming up tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. So if you are interested in tuning in for that, please follow along on the Kentucky Career Center Facebook page. So we were able to feature Tyson, who is an employer who is still hiring, and then Phoenix Services, who last week was hiring. And we have had over 1,200 views on both of those videos. So while we've had roughly 30 to 35 people watching live kind of as it's happening, those videos do stay up on the Facebook page. And so in the last 2 weeks, both of those videos have received over 12,000 views, which is, I'm sorry, 1,200, not 12,000, 1,200 views, which we're really excited about. And we've gotten some really great feedback about those. So definitely, I think that is one of those best practices that will kind of carry forward. And in terms of best practices, that's a new thing for us. And so we are continually looking at how to do that in a view friendly kind of way. There are some challenges since we can't be in person with that employer. So we right now kind of have them split screening, and we're working with the chamber to learn a little bit more about how they're doing some of their live broadcasts to CQI that situation and learn from them. Also, last week we held a webinar for employers. So we had a webinar that we did via Zoom. We sent out an invitation. We had over 15 employers signed on for that webinar, really talking about, for those employers that are hiring or looking at their business model right now, how do they, continue to hire while maintaining social distancing, following all the guidelines. So we were really excited about that turnout. That is also posted on the website and available for view, after, for those who weren't able to participate in the webinar. And this morning we were highlighted on the Northern Kentucky Chamber's Workforce Wednesday. So we were really looking forward to that opportunity. And Eric Owsley, as our business services, our regional workforce coordinator, he led the charge on that and talking about all of the things that we've been doing here at the Career Center.
Ellen, can I just say, Eric did a really great job with that presentation today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. He's really, he did the webinar as well. And so I've really enjoyed, he's done a great job with those. Thank you. And then kind of shifting gears a little bit, of course, there are, the downsides of this. Jason had mentioned rapid response activity, which, as Andy kind of kicked us off a month ago, was not a large piece of our work, but things have definitely shifted in that. In the past week alone, we've received 4 notifications from employers who are doing layoffs. I think sometimes there's talk that maybe the layoffs would, the companies that are going to shut down have done that, but I think we are still seeing some trickle through. So that those 4 that we've received in the last week account for 600 local affected workers in the area. And as Jason mentioned, of course, typically our rapid response would be in person. We would go in, we would bring all of our partners on site and, really talk to all of those affected workers about the opportunities available to them. The state has put together a website to kind of serve as an intermediary in this time that has all the information around rapid response. But in addition to that website, Eric and Heather Mullins, who's our rapid response coordinator, and myself are working on utilizing Zoom to be able to do a format like this, more of a webinar format where we could put together a presentation of the information for rapid response and get that to employees of these affected of these layoffs. And then lastly, we've also seen an increase in, not just rapid response activity, but employers that are calling with questions about unemployment insurance for their employees, and kind of as they're making decisions about what is best for their business, trying to, get kind of some information from us. And so we've seen, roughly 100 employers have reached out in the last few weeks, specifically in regards to unemployment insurance and e-claims for their, as they're filing for their employees in that situation. And I think that is it for me. If there aren't any other questions, I'll turn it over to Corey.
Any questions for Ellen?
Hey, Ellen, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, this is Dave. Great report, and you guys are doing a tremendous job. I'm just hearing all kinds of great things going on. But can you talk a little bit to maybe some challenges or gaps that maybe we can help you out? I know that the picture can't be quite as rosy as maybe you suggested in some cases. Where are you struggling, or where are the challenge points?
So I think the rapid response is a little bit of a challenge point for us right now, in terms of getting a presentation of that size virtual, and really encompassing the resources that we would give in an in-person rapid response. That is, we haven't yet been able to get that to be on a Zoom meeting. So those are definitely things that's in the works, and that's kind of what's presenting us the challenges. We do have plans to purchase additional Zoom technology that should be helpful in that. But I think, again, just kind of scaling that type of presentation in a virtual format is I would think, and Eric, I think Eric's on as well. I don't know if you have, as our business services lead, if you have any other, you're getting the majority of those calls from employers and things.
Thanks, Ellen. I would say a few challenges that I've observed so far. One from the kind of the more of the job seeker side of things, but particularly our youth program. We've had several youth internships kind of fall off due to all this. So our team has been super responsive in connecting them with Brighton Center or other emergency resources. But I would say, Dave, that's been a big challenge. And also too, I would just say, and I mentioned this this morning on the Workforce Wednesday, we've had I've had several employers reach out to me concerned about if employers, basically the incentive of employers returning to work because they're already receiving CARES Act funding and, UI benefits. So they had some concerns about, if there are openings, like would they be available to come back to work, or would they want to? So I've been kind of working with Connie Schnell on some of those questions.
Right.
Yeah, that to that point, this is Brent. We've heard that a number of times already from employers, and it's our understanding that, look, if it's your previous job and they're offering you a position back, especially with the payroll protection, that those employees have to take it back. There's really not an option to stay on unemployment if you can be hired back. And so I think some of that is communication for sure. I did want to echo Dave's comments and on the thanks to Ellen, to everybody that's been participating, Tara, Jason, everybody that's helped the chamber, deal with the communication aspect of this. I think you guys have done an excellent job, really, despite the crazy situation. One bit of bad news and something to consider, especially when it comes to rapid response, is, auto sales in Northern Kentucky are down significantly, almost 50% last month, and it's going to be worse this month. We're getting 4 weeks to the gallon at this point. So I think that is a concern because guess what we make in Northern Kentucky and as a state? We make cars, we make auto parts, we make and with airlines. I saw a survey today as part of the convention center. Not the convention center, Convention Visitors Bureau, some research that suggests that even when we come back to some semblance of normalcy, we're not going to be flying as much as we were. I think that everyone kind of knows that. We're going to be doing a lot of staycation stuff, we hope, at some point. But flying is going to come back last. And guess what else Kentucky makes? Aerospace stuff. And so this is going to be, I think rapid response is going to we're going to have to figure this out, because this is the very beginning of that aspect of that. I think we're going to see things over the coming months that's going to really impact the region in a negative way. So just keep that in mind. It's going to be a slow recovery, and we're all going to have to navigate those waters together.
Yeah.
So Brent, this is Andy. I guess kind of what I'm hearing you say is that the impacts and then therefore the recovery, it's not going to be equally distributed, right? I mean, and I think that's been one of our big challenges as business services, is that we've had this universal problem of a lack of workforce. And now it seems like certain industries are going to be in a much better position after this, and certain industries are going to be in a much more difficult position. So
it's a shift for sure.
Yeah. I mean,
no,
I guess
well said. Yeah.
And I feel like this group is well positioned to, we've worked so hard to try to get that next one employee into an employer that needs it. I feel like we're in good shape to make a lot of connections when the time comes. And it seems like we're already starting.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think, I will just speak for the chamber's part. I've talked to a number of volunteers and people and staff involved that are grateful for the GROW initiative and the relationship that we have with the WIB and our Career Center. And I think we're positioned to navigate these waters better than other areas of the state, and certainly maybe even the country, because of those relationships in place. We went from trying to go to businesses and saying, hey, how can we help you, to now they're coming to us begging, like, how can we get involved? How can we get some of the services? So I think we're in a position to definitely take advantage of that. My thing on the rapid response is that I think we're going to see a bunch of those needs for rapid response over the coming months. And at the same time, you're right. There's going to be job openings. There's plenty of people hiring right now that can, but people are trying to figure out where we are at the moment. So, and they don't know if they want to leave their job or their position to go to something else because of the assistance that's being laid out. So this is where we are, but it's definitely the beginning. And Janet Harrow, I don't know if she's on this meeting or not, but she had a really good analogy this morning in a conversation with her. She said that we've all just dropped, to the bottom of the Empire State Building from the top. And now we're going to start having to head back up once things start to return to some operation. We're going to start going back up, but we're going to be taking the stairs. It's going to be a slow rise. I'm hoping we can do some things that make us run up the stairs instead of walking, but it's going to definitely be a slow rise. So just thanks again, Ellen. Thanks for all you've been doing, really.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Brent. Anything else for Ellen? Okay, so it looks like we're moving on through your presentation. Jason, what's up next? Did we lose Jason?
No, I'm here. My apologies. So what we wanted to do now. Oh,
I'm sorry. There was one more slide for that Corey had in terms of
did we
our
did we
customer
lose it?
flow. Sorry, didn't want to cut him out.
Oh, sure. Let's see. Did we lose it? Let me go back and see what there it is. All right. How about that? Well, hold on. Let me see. I thought it was their partnership. Oh man, we all kinds of activity there. There we go. Is this it, Ellen?
Yes,
Corey?
that's it. Yeah.
Okay, my apologies. I think we accidentally omitted those. That's my fault.
No problem. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see 4 of you. Just to piggyback real quick on something Brent was saying, a couple things Brent was just saying. We really have recognized the benefit of Grow NKY during this time because of having solidified those partnerships. It's really made this transition in our economy a little bit smoother, although still painful. It's definitely nice to have had those relationships already in the making and in having strong connections there. So really appreciate Grow's role in that. The other thing I think this whole thing has taught us is that, that low unemployment rate that we've been talking about for how long now, 3.1%, 3.6%, whatever it might be. As of today, Free Store Food Bank only has 3 weeks of food left. And so in the course of a month, with these closures, having people to be in that position to where they're having to access emergency assistance just kind of tells you what a good economy really looks like. I mean, it's not low unemployment. It's getting those high wage, high quality jobs into our region and getting people off of that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle. And I think this whole situation has really painted a clear picture of, we thought we had a pretty decent economy, but in reality, we didn't. We had low unemployment. So, and we had a lot of good momentum with our employers, and we're doing some good things. And of course, we have to be nimble and shift. And so I'm a little bit disappointed to have some of those efforts sort of go on the back burner right now and shift our focus, but happy to do what we need to do to meet the needs of our customers right now. And it has brought to light some different opportunities. And I, for one, think, this opens the door to possibly some entrepreneurship services out of the Career Center, and seeing what we can do more in that space. And one thing, finally, I wanted to touch on that it was not on Ellen's slide, but we are continuing to offer Discover KCC, our orientation for employers on a quarterly basis. And we've transitioned to doing that in a virtual format as well. So our next one is May 22nd. We're going to give it our first run in a virtual way via Zoom. So we hope to have good participation in that. To get to the numbers here on the slides, as you can see, and this has been alluded to already a little bit by Jason, we're being inundated with calls, about 2,000 a week. We've slowly gotten more people onto the call center. So right now, as of today, we have about 10 people fielding calls. Those calls are becoming more and more time consuming or challenging, I should say. A lot of the cases where people have already filed, maybe there's issues with their claims. So we're seeing a trend of our folks having to spend more time on each call, which is causing some challenges in terms of log jamming the lines a little bit, but we're doing the best we can. Also, Jason alluded to the email or the website contact form that was created and updated recently, I should say. And we're seeing a high volume of inquiries come through that too. Just yesterday, we had a little over 50 inquiries that just came in through that website contact us form. And that's continuing. I was on an email late last night and I heard ding, ding, ding. I mean, we probably had a dozen inquiries after 9 p.m. last night. So that's another way that we're trying to do our best to serve customers and answer questions. I think that pretty much covers the numbers. We continue to see 300 to 400 a day calls and an increase in emails. But we're doing the best we can to address people's needs as they come in. Any questions at all?
Questions for Corey? Well, to both of you, just thank you for the update and the outstanding work. It's just a massive shift in the way you're providing services and to whom you're providing services, and you've just done a great job of being nimble and keeping your eyes on the issues. So thank you for all the hard work you're doing. I know that there's no easy way to change your business model overnight, but it seems like you guys have done an outstanding job. So thanks for your hard work. Moving on, I think we are we at the part in the program now, Jason, where we're talking about partnership? There we are. All right, Tara.
Hello, everybody. Of course, my furnace just turned on, so sorry about that if it's a little noisy. Can you hear me okay, Andy? Okay, great. I don't have a lot in terms of slides. I just have this, but I did want to highlight 4 opportunities that I see for us. I think Jason, Ellen, and Corey did a great job outlining how they've been working and really, said it a million times, but unprecedented situation. And I think they've done a great job. And I continue to receive so much positive feedback from both partners in the community, but also people who have reached out to me that have needed help, that I've been able to connect them with the Career Center and have been so pleased with the support and resources that they were able to receive there. So kudos to them. So just a few things in terms of areas of opportunity and ongoing challenge, of course, as well. And so the first one that I'd like to highlight is the ongoing relationship that we have with the Cabinet for Education and Workforce. I have been so impressed with how responsive and nimble the state really has been with addressing these challenges. But make no mistake, there's still, and we've already talked about it today, there's such a challenge with the capacity in the phone and email system. So the fact that our team has been able to really pivot and answer unemployment calls, hopefully we won't have to do that for much longer, but obviously the fact that we can have team members working in that way and supporting the overall community need. Hopefully this number has gone down. Last week, Deputy Secretary Benton estimated about 20,000 individuals had been trying to get through, but had not been able to make their initial claim for some reason, just because they couldn't access the system. We also know that a lot of people, this is the first time they have ever filed for unemployment. Maybe that's because they just haven't been in the situation before. Obviously, it's just so far beyond what would be normal, but also because many of the folks that are applying right now are independent, small business owners, contractors, where previously they would not have been eligible, but they've been now made eligible through these changes at the federal and state level. And so working out the kinks of, what drop down tab, they need to click on in order to do some of these things to make it work. That has definitely been a learning curve as well. So we certainly have been working with the state to disseminate information as much as possible through all the platforms that we have available to us. And we certainly have appreciated the chamber and their role in elevating a lot of this information and being able to get it out to business partners. We really appreciate that for both their employees and just word of mouth in the community. Hey, I have a friend who kind of things, and people being able to share new information as it comes online. Certainly, we're continuing to monitor the e-claims support for local businesses. And through the second quarter, we know that the state is going to be using the general trust fund for unemployment for that emergency rather than drawing from individual employer accounts. So as we get a little closer to the end of the quarter, we'll be monitoring that to see if they're going to be able to continue that or if they're going to have to switch to taking those payments from individual accounts. So just wanted to highlight that we've had a great relationship with the state and really see that continuing moving forward. Multiple calls a week with them. The next opportunity I see is more local with our rapid response. You've already heard a lot about some of the challenges that we're having in that area, but I have been pleased with really through our GROW partnerships, greater coordination with the chamber, interest from Triad and making sure that they can offer services when appropriate, when it makes sense, and also a lot of interest from our judges. I've been in communication with all three of our northernmost county judges, Boone, Kent, and Campbell. They're really interested in better understanding what's going on with rapid response and how they can support that effort, which I think will be just a great way to help get communication out about the work that's happening and hopefully just aid in that process of getting support to employees when they need it. So I'm looking forward to we actually have a call scheduled on Friday to make sure that we're really able to just really wrap around the community and hopefully some of the challenges that we're having in terms of getting to those employees that are being dislocated. Who knows, but maybe there's ways that the local government involvement might be able to provide some additional and resources. So trying to see that, obviously a challenge, but trying to see it as an opportunity as well, since we do have some organizations interested in stepping up to help with it. Next is really, unfortunately, a big challenge that we're just seeing how it's going to play out. So this is an update that I can't really tell you exactly what it's going to be, but Andy and I had actually talked about providing an update today about AMIP, which is the Advanced Manufacturing Industry Partners Group. I know Carissa could tell me exactly if I got the acronym right or not, but that is a group that is manufacturing employers that is convened by Partners for a Competitive Workforce to deal with best practices, really anything in the realm of employee practice and procedure. And so we found out last week that after Andy and I talked about this, Andy said this is new, is United Way of Greater Cincinnati has terminated their Partners for a Competitive Workforce program. The team was notified, I believe it was last Tuesday or Wednesday, and that was their last day. So they didn't really have a lot of time to do much transition or rolling out of what exactly that new plan will be for those programs. I have, as you all might imagine, a number of friends and colleagues still at United Way. So I've had a number of conversations to try to better understand what that looks like. Brent and Lisa and I have a call scheduled with Moira Weir next week, and definitely looking forward to understanding if she has some plans that maybe some of the other people that I've spoken to are not aware of. But at this point, it's really unclear what's next for some of those programs that were previously run through PCW. So really disappointed to hear about that, and certainly we'll keep you all abreast of that situation as it unfolds. And then the last one is more a little vaguer, but I do want to highlight, building off Brent's comments about, and I guess Janet's comments about, we went down on the elevator pretty fast, but we're going to be stair-stepping our way back up. I have had some conversations with Kimberly Rossetti and of course all of our team about what are those resources that we need to have available for employers once some of the restrictions and things open up and the economy likely very slowly develops. And that's something that I feel that this committee is so, well positioned to guide us on, in terms of what sorts of things might we do now to make sure we're ready for that time. And that's where I'm hoping we can, Andy, maybe have a little bit of conversation about what you all are thinking in that way.
Thanks, Tara. Thoughts? I mean, I know that's a lot to digest, but I think that, responding to this recovery, if that's a term we can use, we need to think, we're reacting to what's happened over the last 4 weeks, but to your point, we need to start thinking about what is our role in that stair step back. And I guess it's just been this week or the last 3 or 4 days that we've heard from governors talk about some potential plans to slowly reopen the economy. And so I guess, what are your all's thoughts, those on the committee, about that, about maybe some things we should be thinking about, or some strategies that we might want to employ as we start to head, hopefully, out of this. Again, it sounds like it's going to be slow, but what are your thoughts at this point in reacting to Tara's report?
Andy, I've got a couple thoughts. One, I think we can play a role in advocacy on multiple fronts. One is advocacy for our workforce efforts here in Northern Kentucky that have taken cuts over the recent years. This seems like a really good time to remind everybody why we're necessary. So that's one thing. But advocacy on the side of, at the city, county, and state levels, for ways they could help businesses reopen. So we're already having those conversations. The state chamber announced the thing today, the US Chamber 2 days ago, Cincinnati Chamber's working on it, and we are as well. And they all play different roles. But I'll give you one example. So let's say, and let's use Perfetti or Coke, who I talked to today. They're operating today. They have not closed down. They're taking temperatures of people as they come in. They put the strips on the forehead. You guys may be doing that at Tank. I don't know. I don't know what the process is.
Yeah, we're taking temps every day.
Yeah. A lot of small businesses, that's an expense they haven't calculated, right? They are getting PPP assistance. As of yesterday, my read was about 20% had actually received any funding from the PPP. And I don't know anybody that's gotten the SBA loan or the $10,000 grant yet. So that's a month for some of these businesses to be without any cash. That's just editorial comment. But anyway, but when they do come back, maybe the cities, the counties, maybe this committee can advocate some, not only standards, but maybe it's for dollars to assist on some of these small businesses. Maybe there's, I'm hearing every day, I spent the morning talking about a couple COVID-19 tests that could be a 15-minute test that you could take. You're cleared, you don't have it, you come back to work, but you've got to do those tests periodically in addition to the temperature. Maybe the cities and counties can help offset the cost of that. Maybe it's free for small businesses. Maybe it's split with businesses that are larger, of a certain size. I'm just throwing this out there, of ways that we could maybe potentially make some recommendations on. So for me, it's policy, but that's, so it's advocacy, And it's also general best practices that this committee could chime in on and help guide those smaller shops, the restaurants that open back up. We're going to take direction from the state. But what are our own? You know, we've got a lot of municipalities here, and are all our counties just going to say, yep, we're going to do whatever the state says, or are we going to have our own that maybe are even, you know, better or specific to us, you know? And then I'll throw this out there too on the transportation side, and I'm not just saying this because Andy, because you're the guy I'm looking at on the screen, but transportation matters, and we've got a bridge that's shut down in 4th Street now between Covington and Newport, and we've got, you know, why in the world we're not investing in some things to help our workforce get to work a little bit better is baffles me. We're 4 weeks to the gallon, and if we raise the gas tax by 10 cents, nobody in the world is going to know. You know, it dropped. It might be free by the time we get off this call. I don't know. So anyway, I'm just saying there's some things on the advocacy side that I think we could do along the way, in addition to just general business practices. So those are some of my.
Hey, Brent.
Yeah.
Hey, just one thought when you mentioned transportation. I know one of the things that we've been watching at the ad just for our own organization's functionality is the timing of this is by the time we think, you know, probably hopefully things are back a little bit more normal, school's going to be out, right? And so people that, I mean, I'm one of them who had summer plans for their kids, camps or whatever it was, there's a really good chance that that stuff's probably not going to come back online at the same rate that maybe some other things are. And so I would just kind of elevate, I know you guys are already so involved in thinking about early childhood and child care as a workforce support, but I don't know what the logistics are even once people are kind of more able to go back. If everything doesn't come online at the same time, are we going to have a disconnect there? And what does that look like? So just something else to.
Well, I think you're right. And I think all of that would depend on testing. Like I keep bringing it back to testing. If we can have some standards to say these people are cleared, these kids are cleared, then we can have some semblance of normalcy. You know, until we get a vaccination, I don't think we're going to be back to normal, you know, whatever that. Right. I don't even remember what normal looks like. But no, I know. But I think testing is the key, and that's why I think it starts with that. But you're right. I think childcare, transportation, those are all recommendations at the very least this committee could recommend up, or, you know, that we can then use to go advocate collectively. Because I think we're going to have to advocate for our fair share of all of this.
So, sorry, this is Andy again. You talk about, I mean, Tara, this is a larger point. We talk about it in our household all the time with somebody who's a teacher. You know, getting kids back to school is almost a prerequisite for getting people back to work. And so I think, I mean, not to expand this discussion even further, but because of GROW and because of the people that are on this committee, we can be better informed about what the status of getting kids back into school is going to look like, because we know that that's, I mean, right, from a workforce perspective, if you have 2 children at home or 3 or whatever, if they can't have something to do during the day, you're not going to be able to be you're not working at full capacity. So I think it's just understanding these connections that thankfully already exist, but how do we keep that information flowing through this committee? And we have the right people to do that. But good point. Other thoughts?
Yeah, to that point, Andy, I think, you know, one of the things we need to make sure we're doing is we're creating our checklists. You know, how is the situation? This is going to happen again. I mean, this is like climate change. I mean, this is what's going to be happening. How soon the cycles, you know, it's like living in a hurricane world. You know, I mean, I grew up in Louisiana and you knew there'd be a hurricane and occasionally there's Katrina. But, you know, it's one of those things that if we're going to be an intelligent business and how everything works together, then I think the WIB and the chamber and the GROW and even the 1KY can be part of this idea of capturing what happened, right? What are the checklists of things that we need to be aware of? For example, just the idea that, yeah, you can turn on the economy, but if the kids aren't going to school, you don't have much of a workforce unless you've got the childcare thing kicked out, and then the transportation thing. I mean, I think this has pointed out a lot of highlights to gaps in our thought process about employment and unemployment and the types of employment we've been having. So I think that, you know, again, as we collect that information, let's have that as a warehouse. I know Janet's shop, Janet Harris' shop is working, you know, with the state and the national chambers, kind of trying to figure out, like, what are kind of jobs that have been hit? What are the kind of jobs that are going to be likely to exist, you know, a couple of years? What are going to be the industries that are going to be more resilient to this kind of, you know, back and forth? And then Dr. Vaidia and we had a really good conversation, and he, you know, being an economist, made the suggestion that for us to really understand what our local supply chains are and how they can be disrupted, and then to work along plans to, you know, how do we make sure that we've insulated, you know, for continuity in this area. I can't imagine what CVG would be like if it did the cargo. I mean, they would be in a major world of hurt. So I think for us to really start capturing that information and having those conversations, now we have the tap. We have something that could shut us down. Now we can start like kind of working on that experiment of what other things are we need to be thinking about as part of our, you know, safety plan, a pandemic plan, a continuity plan, something along those lines.
Agreed. Other thoughts? So I don't know if there's anything, again, completely actionable at this point, other than, I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. We need to start making those lists of things that are very important to us through this process, and not quickly forget them. So we build structures that can withstand, you know, hurricanes better than they did before this whole process. So appreciate it, Tara.
I was just going to say, for our part as staff, I really appreciate all the comments. We do receive notices of funding specifically that might be coming through DOL, you know, that really goes specifically to WIBs. And so one of the things that that we can focus on, and Katie Jo can, you know, giving her direction on this can help her think through when she sees something, how to be creative about maybe the potential use. I think it'd be really fascinating to see if, hey, could we apply for some funding for tests, or could we apply for some funding for something of that sort? I mean, that actually was, you know, medical expenses or emergency expenses of that kind was called out in the CARES Act as something that would be available for local governments to apply for. So, you know, maybe in partnership with our local counties, maybe that's something that we could potentially do as specifically, you know, that catalyst to be able to help local businesses get up and running, for example. So those are the kinds of things as staff that we can continue to monitor, you know, with some of this input. So that's helpful.
So Tara, not to get too deep into the weeds, but did any of the federal bills provide direct funding through the DOL pipeline, you know, through the WIB managed programs? Was there any more funding put into that hopper to be distributed, either, you know, state and local level?
No, not that I'm aware of. The most recent, I think they were calling it like the phase 3, if you will, the CARES Act that came most recently with the stimulus funding and the money for the weekly unemployment addition to what the state unemployment rate would be. That did not have anything in it specifically that would have come like to the workforce area, but it did have some funding for local governments through CDBG, and some of those mechanisms. And so that's where having local partnerships, I think, might be really key. I still anticipate that I think we're going to see some targeted funding through DOL, however, but there's not anything yet.
So building upon Brent's comment about supporting and working with our city, county, local governments, if there are programs available for application, even if they are somewhat or tangentially related to what we're doing, and we can support our county governments to go after those funds. I mean, that's what I'm hearing is that, as of yet, there isn't financial support specifically for local governments. And right now we have a group of governments that know how to act. And it would be, if we can help, if there's a pot of money out there that needs a good application and we can help with that, I mean, we've got the right people to help.
Absolutely.
So to that point, I'd like to suggest maybe, Andy, that we consider an ad hoc committee to kind of help gather our thoughts. We can't wait until the next business committee meeting or the WIB meeting. And maybe some of us have a little bit more spare time these days now that we're at home. But somehow we need to kind of get all these thoughts together and prioritize them, so that we're speaking at least with one voice or 1.5 voices as we start to meet, whether it's funding or a bucket list or a set of guidelines that we're going to follow in principle. And again, we're still waiting, as several of you mentioned, for direction from a lot of the leaders. But I'd like to be able to, when we get that direction, be able to say, okay, this is what we said we were going to do in this area, whether it's jobs or transportation or education or what have you. But I think an ad hoc committee would probably be, it would suit us well, I think, at this point.
I agree. Other thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree. And I said that the chamber is advocating on things like the transportation, and we are having the conversations about what a return to operations will look like. So I think this will complement those efforts very well, and again, ensure that we've got this ongoing partnership of efforts. So and to Fernando's point, I think identifying those key areas that we need, because it's not going to be just this crisis. I agree, there will be another one. And so us learning from this has got to be part of that. So all good thoughts. I love this group. I mean, this is just such a real help to me. And so thanks to everybody for those thoughts. Ad hoc committee, count me in, or one of our team from the chamber for sure.
So at this point, since we're not in an official meeting, I think maybe I'll reach out to Tara and Jason after this, and we'll talk through. It seems like we'll provide an opportunity for everybody to express their interest. I know it sounds like Dave and Brent, you are both interested, which is awesome. I, of course, will be happy to participate. But there are other folks that aren't on this call. So maybe I'll work with, if there aren't objections, I'll work with Tara and Jason, and we'll get something out to this group within the week. Okay. All right. Thank you, Tara, for your report. I think we're on to number 7, Jason.
Okay, thanks. So shifting gears just a little bit, I wanted to share some updates about our contract monitoring process for the Northern Kentucky Workforce Investment Board and our contract monitor, specifically the one-stop operator and direct services provider, and that process. And so this is something that we assemble and go through this process obviously once a year, but it's an ongoing process as well. And the first slide just kind of gives you some background about the purpose of this. It is something that comes straight out of the WIOA law itself. There's a fiscal component, and that's part one, is really looking at the financials and making sure that costs that were charged are appropriate and in compliance. And then also making sure that there are just appropriate cost measurements and controls in place. The second part is determining overall programmatic compliance. And so that the big piece of that really looks at individual and business case notes and files of our Key Suite system that really is the interface that the state utilizes for workforce to house that information. And then also Salesforce on the side, it's called NKWIB, we look at that information from the business services programming perspective, just to make sure that the provisions of WIOA, but also the WIOA regulations and other laws and regulations, including anything locally from a policy perspective. Number 3 is just assuring compliance. It ties into kind of everything that's done from a fiscal perspective, from a programmatic perspective. And then 4 is really making sure that from an EEO perspective, that we are in compliance, and also on top of being in compliance, that we're supporting the Assistive Technology Act for individuals, customers, staff that may need specific job accommodations, and that we are supporting those individuals and entities. So that's just a little background about this monitoring process. We went through this process this year, this fiscal year rather, starting in March. And we opened up the process with a fiscal monitoring that took place on site. That was on site at Brighton Center on March 3rd. And then during the month of March through just the beginning of April, so just a little over a month, we really kind of looked under the hood in program monitoring world and analyzed the direct services provisions for adults, dislocated workers, trade impacted individual customers, business services, and youth. And then along with that, we have, with the firewall separating, we have our one-stop operator functions as well, which is really essentially the Kentucky Career Center leadership on site. And so those are the 2 functions under that program monitoring piece. So the results of the monitoring, and I wanted to mention too, that the full detailed reports of all of this monitoring, it was provided to the Program and Youth Committee, and they actually had their convening yesterday over Zoom. And so that committee is the committee that's charged with doing the full review of the complete monitoring results. And so that committee has vetted that information, but because part of the direct services provider's role is to also have a supportive nature with business services and providing high quality business services to our employer customers, along with the one-stop operator providing an atmosphere that is conducive to support business services as well. And so the results of the monitoring, we had, there were no findings that were identified. However, there were 2 observations, and those observations are simply items that could potentially lead to future findings if they were left unaddressed. And so we had 3 of those that were program related and 2 that were fiscal related, all minor observations. All of those items were discussed and also have a resolution plan in place with those, with the partner. And so we wanted to mention that. So in terms of this monitoring exercise and also the results, it showed that contractual and WIOA compliance was in fact there. And then, as I mentioned, the full report was provided to the Northern Kentucky WIB's Program Youth Committee. I'll also mention this as well, that there is another monitoring process that takes place from the Department for Workforce Investment, the state level staff, and that for us is scheduled for the week of May 18th. And so during that exercise, it could provide some additional information. They could have some additional observations. Hopefully we won't see any findings from them. Regardless, any of the information that they reveal from that process, we will come back and share any relevant updates or amendments to this contract monitoring result. But we wanted to give this committee just that update in terms of the 2 functions of our direct services for adults, dislocated worker, businesses, and youth, and our one-stop operator for the Kentucky Career Center. And of course, I'll entertain any questions.
Questions for Jason? All right, thank you, Jason. Good work. I know this is the important, gardening that has to continue even in the middle of a crisis. So thanks for all your hard work. We'll move on to key metrics.
Okay, and I believe there was a time where David might have been bounced off the call, but I think he made it back on. David Klockner, are you on the call again?
Yep, I'm back.
Awesome. So David and I will tag team this information. David, I don't know if you want to start by kind of walking us through, and if we need to expand, if everybody can see that information clearly.
Yeah, let me pull up the copy here real quick.
Oh yeah, if you have a copy to share, that'd be awesome.
Oh yeah. I can definitely do that.
So while we're doing that,
I think I can't share the screen because it's not my meeting, but I can email a copy of this to everybody afterwards too.
Is this better? Is that better for everyone? Did it expand on your screen?
That's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, David, feel free to walk us through.
Well, this is the standard KPI that we do every month. And the one thing I want to point out is, so this is through the end of March, but we didn't really see big impacts from COVID-19 until the end of March. So a lot of that's not reflected in this report yet.
Correct. Yeah.
We won't have March's unemployment from KY Stats until the end of April, even though they've been working like overtime to push stuff out weeks ahead of time. So I'm not sure really how relevant this is to the COVID.
Sure.
Situation.
Yeah.
I guess maybe what we'll do is we'll just ask for if there are any questions. We're reporting on a quarter that is an environment completely unlike the one that we're in now. So if anybody wants to do some postmortem on the first quarter of the year, feel free to, or I guess it's the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year.
Of the fiscal year, right.
Feel free to chime in. So I'll just open it up for questions.
Yeah. And I had mentioned earlier to our division in an email that we're going to be answering questions about March 2020 for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Agreed. And so, having the data, really solid is going to be important. And also a way of building the advocacy case that Brent was talking about. I mean, the big shift and then the response of the SWIB and how effectively it has made the pivot, I think is going to be very important to identify, go with your hot hand, as it were.
Right.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that this is great information right now, but our world is 180 degrees from where it was 3 weeks ago. So I think it's imperative for us to have the most recent data as quickly as we can, David and Jason. And I know you guys have struggled for years on getting information. Sometimes that's a quarter behind. We pat ourselves on the back, but in this case, we really have to have data if we're going to be making decisions based towards solutions that are logical and practical. So I think it's real important to go that route.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's one of the reasons we intentionally had left this item for the last agenda topic, because we knew that if we started out with this, it's just not relevant to the everything happening right now. So we realized that, but because this is one document or one agenda item that's a standing item rather on this committee's docket, we wanted to make sure we at least included the most recent updated format, which was the March of 2020. But we're acutely aware it is the relevancy is certainly not as it was prior to our last meeting.
So maybe from a historical perspective, that's where we need to get back to, huh?
Yeah. This document was historical before I pushed the button.
So
but now
I think,
sorry.
No,
I just got one more thing to say. The middle part, the outreach, the WIOA section, that's relevant. That we can pull that real time daily from KWIBs.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not the WIOA part, but the business service part. We'll see our effectiveness in serving employers daily.
And to that point, David, I think that what I heard over the last hour is that you all you're generating new data that you weren't tracking before. How many Facebook Live hiring events were you doing in the past?
Right.
The chats that you're getting in that you weren't getting before, in terms of online, chat support. and I think it all goes to David's point. If we're going to make the case that we made this pivot quickly, it's good to know that those employer outreach contacts are going to continue to be monitored, because I think we're going to show that we didn't retreat, but kicked it into high gear.
Right. And, you know, we did about 30 days worth of hiring events in a 2-week period too. They really went high gear at the Career Center. So
Great. So any other questions about KPIs?
I'll just mention, if I could, Andy, that what we'll do in the meantime is David and I can get with Tara to look at opportunities to establish maybe a companion document that can fit within this KPI, because there are so many new categories and fields that we're reporting on now. We may not have some of the prior year historical data, but I think it'll be relevant for what's happening in the here and now. So David and I will match up with Tara to put our heads together and figure out what would be the best solution for that.
And to the point, if we do end up with an ad hoc committee, it might be good to know what is the most pertinent data that the Career Center can create, so that we have, that committee has at least an idea of the data that's available, or what they may need to ask to escalate or push forward. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. All right. Any other questions here? All right. Seeing none, it looks like we're about to the end of the agenda here. Any items for the good of the group or anything that we need to cover before we adjourn? Well, we're not going to adjourn, but before we turn the Zoom meeting off, since we didn't convene, so we can't adjourn. Anything else for the good of the group? All right. Thank you all. Super. Great to hear from you. Good to see you. Take care. And hopefully we will see y'all soon. Thanks.
Thanks everybody for the hard work, and especially Brighton and Career Center. You guys are awesome.
yes.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, everybody.
Y'all take care.
Thank you.